Text JJR and your message to 96893. Text us about anything. You can also call us 877-937-1047. Listen to this. So a year from now, my wife and I will be what's called empty nesters. Like my son Jake is at school in college, my son Kemp is at college, and Dutch is a senior at high school. So it's like kind of freaky. It's a year from now, right?
Yeah, that's wild. That's almost scary.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, how are my wife and I, are we going to get along? What's that like, you know? I mean, we were married for a long time before we had kids, so still, whatever, we're going to reconnect. Yesterday, my son Dutch, he's a senior in high school, and he's in the president of senior class. He's on the basketball team, lacrosse team, wow, all this other stuff, right? So he was gone. So my wife and I had dinner, and it's just her and I. She made dinner. We're just sitting at the table by ourselves, right? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, is this what it's going to be like, right? So I'm like, I'm really trying to pay attention to our conversation. You know what we talked about?
What?
Tomatoes.
What about tomatoes?
She went to the grocery store to buy a bunch of these little tomatoes, and she bought a bunch. She was standing in line. She's like, don't they taste great? And I go, yeah. And she's like, she's standing in line. People come behind her, and she knows some people in line, as she always does. Then she realizes the tomatoes are $10. She thinks that's too much for tomatoes.
That's crazy.
She's like, it's absurd. And she's like, I can't just leave the line because the tomatoes are too expensive. So she paid for the tomatoes. And then we sat and talked about how good the tomatoes were. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is what.
Yeah, you need your kids in there to make that.
I was hoping maybe you're going to get on the table and do a striptease. Like, there's nobody here.
Right.
You know, so
that might be your podcast. You never know.
I'm like, oh my God. How are we going to survive? Is that what's going to happen? Like, I see, well, speaking of, you know what? Why don't we just grow our own tomatoes? And all of a sudden, I got a garden in the backyard. And I'm like, I was like, oh my God, I got to figure
Tuesday
something out.
tomato talk.
I mean, Rich, you're a newlywed. What's going on in your life? That's the point of view of someone who's been married a long time. You're a newlywed.
That's true, and we're trying to get to know each other. First of all, the best, besides my kids, and maybe alongside my kids in this radio show, Stacy's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I love her to death. She is completely awesome, and we are totally different in that you guys know that I'm a bit of a neat freak. I like things to be in order.
A bit might be an understatement, but yeah, we know this about you, Rich.
And I remember, like, Stacy would, like, not let me into her house a lot because she'd be like, it's a mess. And I thought she was exaggerating it. I just think, I've been in your house and it's fine. But she would, towards the engagement, I wouldn't get to go in there because things were a mess. She said it looked like moving day. So at our house, I clean stuff up all the time. I pick up cans, just empty cans of, seltzer water, and I'm throwing stuff away all the time. I'm the only guy that takes out the trash. I'm the only guy that cleans up. And that's okay. She's a genius person. And what she told me, she said, Richard, if you need a discerning word from the Bible, I can facilitate that. But I am not a picker-upper of things, is what she said. She wrote it down. That's exactly what she said. So I get into bed, and I now am convinced that my bride is trying to kill me because I get into bed, and I get under the covers, and I've got my shorts and my little T-shirt on, and
gross.
A knife.
The visual.
A knife is in my leg.
There like was a really sharp knife, a butter knife?
A sharp, like a steak knife.
Oh my gosh.
Under the covers?
Under the covers.
So a steak
I
there?
whip around and I'm like, are you trying to kill me? What is happening? And instead of her saying, oh my God, I'm sorry, she laughs hysterically.
So she ate something, left the knife there, and then made the bed?
No, here's what happened. She was looking for a pair of scissors to cut a tag off some new clothes because she got a shipment and she was sitting on the bed going, putting on her makeup, cutting off tags, but couldn't find scissors. So she grabbed a steak knife and then forgot that she had the steak knife but wanted to make the bed. So
she's trying to kill you.
Or she's trying to kill me. And I'm like, that's not smart. I don't have a will yet. So now I'm not going to do a will because if I go, then this is my safety net. So I would have thought I would have been mortified, but she's like, I just forget things.
You know what?
So
I think I would take that over talking about tomatoes. The excitement of not knowing what your wife's going to try to kill you or not. Every day you come home like waiting for an attack.
It's a lot of stuff. It's like you'll see, like curling irons plugged in, like on the carpet. I'm like, okay, we're going to burn the house down. We need to have a system. But, overall it's great. But, I may die in my sleep. And if that happens, then you guys know I've said it right here.
Okay. So I'm going to come home. Hey, Blake, why don't you hide some knives?
Let's get exciting.
Let's make this interesting. Like the Barra
No
House.
more tomato talk. No more telling me how sweet these zucchinis taste.
So far as I know, we have never talked about tomatoes in my house.
Man, that's what happens when you've been married a long time.